right, so we're going to have a great time today. We're going to talk about AI across multiple industries. We've got a great panel for you, and I'm going to ask each panelist to give their background as they answer this first question, which is, can you please provide an overview of AI from your company's perspective? Does your company have an AI worldview? If so, what it is? And then we'll take it from there, please.
All right. Hi, I'm Garth Andrus. I am the president of Cognitia, which is a digital talent and organization transformation company. And I'll explain that in a second, the worldview. But just quick background, I spent most of my career at Deloitte. I'm one of the founding members of Deloitte Digital. Ended up creating a really fun and great practice there that ended up being about $1 billion a year. And most of my career there. And then what really brought me to the field of AI was actually many, many years ago. My doctoral dissertation I did at Vanderbilt University. I did it in AI, and that was in the late 1980s. And AI was just not where it should be at the time. But I was able to do that and work with IBM to actually build an expert system at the time. And then it was kind of dead for about 20 years or so, and then started to explode. So I'm so excited to be at this time, where we are in this world right now, to see how generative AI and AI in general is coming around. Real quickly, I did spend a few years doing research together with MIT, and out of that we wrote a book, and the book was focused on 18,000 surveys and work around the world. The book's called The Technology Fallacy, I've taken that same data, and this is where the reason I'm bringing that up is we're able to use that and then help companies around the world with digital transformation. It was all focused on digital transformation. So I've now taken that data, this work we did, and ported that over to what is the unique components of generative AI. So our worldview on this is that companies are basically like 23andMe, right? Basically a DNA. You have a DNA as a company. It's pretty palpable, believe it or not. And we figured out ways to actually assess the DNA of a company, and around 12 different dimensions and a lot of sub-dimensions. And now we've taken that and looked at generative AI and all the changes it's making to the business. So in short, what happens is, as generative AI comes in, it's changing organizations, and will change organizations in ways we haven't even figured out yet, right? So as we saw with Fred's presentation, there's all sorts of things that happen: changes processes, changes structure, changes governance, policies, skill needs, leadership skills, geography considerations, on and on. And that's kind of our worldview. We look at it that way and say, let's look at your DNA. Let's figure out what the unique DNA of generative AI is, and how do we help you bridge the gap so that you can get the value out of AI that you need to get as a company. So,
thank you, Garth.
Yeah.
Kaushal?
Yep. Thank you. My name is Kaushal. I run the product management function for all of AI platform at Salesforce. And my background is in search and data and AI. Spent a lot of years in search at places like Ask Jeeves, if you remember the brand. We used to be good at question answering, actually, in natural language processing, NL models. I remember building it painstakingly at that time for search. And now it's become far more easier with large language models, actually. But I also see that people were going back to now answering, or rather asking questions. And it used to be, we used to find it very tough that people would go to keywords rather than questions at that time. So it's come full circle. So it's fascinating to see that. And in my role, we spend a lot of time, this 10 months or so, 11 months have been really transformational for our company, but also what we do at Salesforce and how we have pivoted entirely from we used to do AI, Einstein. I saw the figurine kind of looked like our Einstein figurine before in the earlier presentation. And we were doing AI and predictive models and lot of transformation across sales, service, marketing, commerce, all of these industries. But generative AI is really, we've completely kind of pivoted to that. Not to say that we've forgotten the other part, but it's a combination, I think. It's predictive plus generative is how I think about it and what we are thinking about. And it will change the way we work. I think the first draft will be written for you, pretty much. It may not replace what you do, but it'll augment definitely what everybody does in most functions. If not today, but it will change in a year or 6 months, depending on the pace at which you move. I've met hundreds of customers, and I know there are customers here, so thank you for that. And we are seeing some customers adopt at a pace that is unbelievable, and putting it in production and really looking at very different ways of working. So we are encouraged by that. We are there to help all this transformation of enterprise business, and it's a fun ride. I think I've not felt so excited in working in, I used to be so excited working in search, and this is again a transformative moment that's really exciting to be in the industry.
Thank you, Kaushal. Victor?
Hey guys, Victor, oh, that's loud. Victor Cho, shorthand. My friends think I'm a tech bro, but I'm really not. But yeah, I've had a long career in technology, Microsoft, Intuit, a couple of startups. Most recently ran Evite, online invitation platform. I'm working on a new AI video company, which is still in stealth, so I can't tell you a huge amount, but it comes back to, I think, one of my core POVs, which is one, I agree with everything you guys said. Like we are gonna experience the largest technological impact to society ever in the next 30 years. I think it's bigger than, I was there in the internet. This is bigger than the internet because we are unlocking intelligence as a service for zero cost effectively. Like that is profound. It literally changes everything. So from a business perspective, what gets me excited, and actually the business I'm running is an example of this, there are things that were impossible to solve before that are now becoming possible. So yes, AI can shave out costs, it can make your processes more efficient, but what I'm most excited about is you can literally relook at the world and say, there's a problem that couldn't have been solved, and you can start solving it. So that to me is incredibly exciting.
Thank you. Afif?
Until the AI figures out we're the problem. Sorry, didn't mean to scare everybody. Hi, my name is Afif Corey. I run a company called Soci Inc. We are the technology partner to some of the world's largest brands. About 1,000 brands, Walmart, AT&T, Ford, Farmers Insurance, etc. What they rely on us is they've gone through a number of transformations in marketing. There was the move to digital, sort of Web 1.0. There was social and reviews and the interaction with the consumer, Web 2.0. Then there was all the mobilization when mobile took over the PC and it all went local. And suddenly these brands who had to manage 6 search engines, 6 social pages, 6 review sites, realized that every single location has all those things to manage. And they now have 100,000 digital marketing pages that daily are interacting with consumers. When you have this sort of massive opportunity or problem and it meets a human capacity issue, can't throw enough people at it, AI is beautiful, right? All that data science, all that machine learning, all that generative AI, being able to mimic human behavior and ultimately deliver an on-brand perfect experience for the consumer everywhere consistently is sort of a dream state for a brand. And so when you sort of think of leveraging AI, it can be scary, but it can also really tremendously help our processes and how we do things, and it can change the relationship that you frankly have with technology. Today, software, which we build, is a tool, and you walk up to it and hopefully it makes you more efficient. What it's not, what it will become, is a partner that you train and it'll be off doing things for you, whether that's as a brand or as an individual. I'm trying to figure out how I can raise my kids better than I can. It's not there yet as a researcher. Put in some questions and got terrible answers. But this is, again, part of the evolution that AI can bring and the things that it can do for us. I was joking earlier how our parents, when the calculator came out, they all freaked out. Oh my God, our kids aren't going to know how to do math. We know how to do math. We just got much better and much more efficient, and the level of math we can now do is incredible. And I think if you think about it that way, that's where this is all headed.
Thank you.
Do we know how to do that? My name is Jin Lee. I'm a professor at Stanford University, and I've been doing research on brain disorders for the past 15 years. And I founded the company called Elvis around 10 years ago to solve brain disorders. I was originally trained as an electrical engineer, but when my grandmother had a stroke around the time when I finished my PhD, I realized, wow, these people really don't know how to do anything. And so I decided to tackle on the problem myself, and so it's been 15 years. One thing that you may or may not know is that brain disorders are increasing very dramatically, I think maybe faster than AI is developing. And despite all the efforts, there's exactly like 0 solutions to brain disorders. And so the problem that I defined as the most critical to solve brain disorders is to be able to create so-called a digital twin for the brain. And so we are now able to model brain function, and based on that, we are able to accurately diagnose and start making treatment. And so after 10 years of R&D, this end of this year, we'll be releasing our first product. And as far as AI goes, I studied the actual intelligence. And so some of the thoughts that I have, yes, I'm very impressed by what's happening with AI, but at the same time, I see a lot of limitations. They do take a lot of ideas from the brain connectivities and stuff when they first started creating these neural nets, but it's very, very primitive. And there are a lot of things that the current AI will never be able to do. And so I think there's a fundamental transformation that's needed to take it to the next step. And one of it really also includes the fact that, okay, AI is very, very impressive in a lot of things, but it's doing things with extreme amount of energy compared to how we do things. We can just eat maybe 3 times a day and do all kinds of complex things, but AI needs to do things that are rather primitive with a lot of energy. And if we use AI the way we do right now, we will run into energy limitation problems. And so based on a lot of brain algorithms that we learned for brain disorder treatment, we're also working on alternative AI methods.
Thank you.
Awesome. That's very hard to follow now. Vicky Alon, I'm the Chief Product Officer at Vidmob. Also have an entrepreneurial background. I've founded 2 companies focusing on customer experience. I think the first one was 12 years ago. Using technology to kind of really enhance the user experience, customer experience in marketing. Always focusing on machine learning back then, building recommendation engine and so forth, and also co-authored Mastering Product-Led Growth. I saw how kind of people prefer more and more self-service and like taking those kind of SaaS approach into the market. I think in Vidmob what we do is also related to personalization. Vidmob is a SaaS solution that understands using computer vision, natural language processing, audio analysis to better understand the creatives that big brands are producing, and then correlating that with performance to help marketers just extract better results. And because normally all the optimization we saw before is all about targeting, and now it's all about actually the creative itself, which is really interesting. So I think AI really is helping us unlock that, and we are building a lot of models in-house to support that, even things like diversity and inclusion and things like that. So I think it unlocks a lot of really impressive things. Our view is we hope that it becomes a productivity tool. It's kind of enhanced creativity as opposed to kind of really potentially making everything looks the same or trying to replace jobs. I think we are going to see the world shifting from content scarcity to content abundance, and we have to our industry needs to kind of do that shift, and people need to adopt pretty fast. So we are hoping for kind of ethical use of that technology. So yeah, I really think it's really interesting times, and I think in the past 12 years we see so many revolution into the to this panel's point, this one is the biggest, and kind of there's a lot of unknowns. So but I like kind of changes, so I'm really excited about that.
Thank you. And so what you have here is a panel that has experience with customers, has experience with deep technology and brain science. We've got people who have enough gray hair to have seen the ups and downs of AI over the course of the last, in some cases, 25, 30 years. And what we're seeing right now is a new wave of AI. And Victor, I'm wondering if you can just share with us some of the elements of the waves that you've seen. And then I'm going to hand it over to you, Garth, because you brought up the notion of agents and where they came from. So Victor, could you please take us to give us an overview of the ups and downs of AIs that you've seen in the last 25 years?
Oh, wow, that's a big question. You guys didn't give us these questions before.
These are not softball questions.
Over the last 25 years, so I think of the world maybe in a simple milestone point that we hit sometime in the last 12 months-ish, although OpenAI was working on it before, which is this is the first time in all of our technology that we've created what I call emergently capable systems. And what is that? Right? These are systems that transcend their design in terms of capability.
Their capabilities emerge as a result.
Exactly. Like ChatGPT, the LLM, which is effectively just a huge digital neural net, right, can do things it was never trained to do, which is the first time that's ever happened in software. To me, it's very simple. It says, like all of our past ML approaches in AI, these have been like brute force, algorithmic, mathematically driven. We're in a new world. We're in a new world where we are literally replicating neural net structure, and it is creating reasoning, logic. Ultimately, it will create consciousness, I have no doubt.
Thanks. Garth, let me hand it over to you. So you've been seeing the ups and downs. What's changed? Why now?
I think when I first got started in this, it was very rule-based. We were writing if-then statements, to do AI. So we were doing expert systems. And I think the key is a lot of times...
And by expert system, you mean you were trying to extract somebody's expert knowledge that we could then code and understand. Like TurboTax is an expert system, right?
Exactly.
Go to the attorney, the accountants, get all their information, and then program it. We don't do that anymore with large language models.
There was a lot of promise at that time, but at that time there was a lot of the beginning of brain drain in a lot of countries, and so we were approaching this as how do we help countries who are having brain drain because they're losing skilled people. So how can we create an expert system with the best knowledge and then be able to accelerate the time it takes to become an expert? And that's what the problem we were trying to solve. So I think as things have moved on, we moved away from that, obviously, and got into machine learning and much more precise and so forth. But I think what's interesting now, where we're at now, is that we do have the expert system. It's all built in. You can ask these questions, and we can get a lot of information that we never could before.
And the irony is like you can ask the machine learning, and it can give you an answer. And like any expert, it doesn't really know how it gave you that answer.
Right.
So
exactly.
That's a shocking element of large language models, and I hope that sinks in.
Yeah, and you can keep adding to it, right? You keep adding questions to it. You can keep refining things we couldn't do before. It was like it spit out an answer before, and now we're able to really look at it in a different way with a lot of nuances. And it still has a long way to go, but it's amazing what it can do now already.
So, Kozlo, you've been in this space for many, many years. So tell us about your experience and the nuclear winners that exist in AI.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, I think the points that were made, the emergent qualities are very different, but also it's challenging for customers when it can give a different answer each time. That is now, predictability is what business wants every time, right? And that could be unnerving. Earlier, these are models were there, predictive models were there, recommendation systems, I built recommenders too. They could do great things related to the data that you had already, and it would just produce it mathematically based on algorithm, and that's more or less definitive, right, within the boundaries. Now you're going past things into saying it can create new things, but it can also spit out lies, right? I mean, factually incorrect statements, and very confidently.
With authority.
With authority and confidence, and with the with grammatically correct responses and all of that.
Even referenced.
Even references, yeah. I mean, there have been a great case, or a famous case, infamous maybe now, in New York recently about a lawyer doing, submitting a case which had made up docket numbers, which looked very real. So that's a challenge. There's an opportunity here for creating new stuff and getting the first draft for you. And that's very different, like was spoken, the emergent qualities are also there. It can be used immediately for your company data without having to have trained on it, just grounding it, providing the context in the context. But then there also is like, okay, can I trust it? Will it give the same answer next time another support agent does the same query or a salesperson does the same query, right?
So Jen was nodding her head. Can I trust it? I'm going to come to you next.
Right.
Go ahead, please.
So that's the challenge. I mean, it is really creative, phenomenal opportunities for us out there, and very different from what came before. But also it does produce new challenges now as to how do you trust it at scale? Like I want to do it there are customers for us who have tens of thousands of support agents. Can you put it in their hands and automatically just let it run like that? That's the challenge that we are trying to address. Creating trust at that level, guardrails, and in multiple languages across the world. And a lot of times this is all English driven. I don't know how well it will be in other languages yet, as an example.
So Jen, why the emphatic response of a no when they came up, can I trust it?
Well, generative AI, by definition, is a lie creator.
That's the quote of the day. You can take that home.
It's
The
generating
AI.
things. It's generating things, and there's no reason to believe that it's true. But I do think this is the current form of generative AI is most useful for creative processes. Like I love the talk that we just listened to. It's really good for that, but for factual things, I don't think it should be trusted. And one of the main things that I talked about it a little bit in terms of the limitations. The reason why right now the AI is impressing us is because we have large computational powers and we're running things. It has flexible room to make things up, which is great, but why do we love experts? Because they have precision. I think knowledge, when we are looking for factual knowledge, precision is what we want. And when do you have precision? You have precision when you can take all the different factors, know how to construct it, and make conclusions out of it, which current form of AI definitely don't do. And so I think, at least in the current form, AI should be used for creative processes and not really expect anything else from it in its current form.
Thanks, Jen. Okay, so we're going to now step back from the deep technology. It is a deep technology. And let's talk more about the user experience and the user, what does it bring? What does AI bring to the table? And Mickey, I'm going to ask you to share with us, you have a lot of customer-facing activity. What are the fears and concerns that you have to address when you're speaking to a customer?
Yeah, I think, just looping back to the precision, we're tracking a lot of data to create that precision because we're trying to better understand and then connect with generative AI. I think from the user perspective, what we're seeing sometimes, based on the data, that there's like things that it feels like almost we kind of the systems are designed to learn and almost manipulate kind of human beings. They can easily trick people.
So your customers are asking you if they're getting manipulated by the AI?
So if our customers just want to understand, for example, is there's diversity and inclusion in their assets and what drives performance, and they also want to drive experiments. When you go to experiments, you can get into kind of really risky area because you might have, the system will identify some biases in audiences and things like that. So they definitely are concerned about making sure that the content is ethical, it doesn't influence for kind of bad purpose. So they're asking for more control.
Is it liability concern or brand management concern, or what is it? What's causing the underlying anxiety?
Yeah, I think it's the way the brand will be perceived, because they're basically unleashing a lot of user-generated content.
Thank you.
And then suddenly there was a scenario that suddenly that someone did like pretty unethical thing, and that public company, the share dropped like 30%.
Right.
That is definitely a huge risk, because they're perceived, and they also invest, by the way, because of the analysis, in sustainability type of messaging that is not related to what they do, but they realize that actually is driving us to eventually like the brand and then buy more. So there's a lot of questions coming up all the time.
Thank you. Afif, you're faced a lot of customers, and I suspect that a common question is, how do I get started in AI? Can you share with us what your response to that question is? Is it a deep technical, you got to get 50 racks and 3 servers and blah, 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 or is it different?
Yeah, I mean, when they come to us looking for AI support, they're not really trying to, set up their own AI engine in the background.
Right, they almost don't care, right?
Leverage it, right? How can we leverage it as a brand?
They're trying to solve problems.
They're trying to solve problems, and it's not the AI itself. It's all the processes and the workflows and how you integrate it into your thinking and into your, into how you want to transact business that matters. So then you get into how you train the models and prompt the models and all those things. So to do that, you really do need a technology partner to take a broader aspect of this. So when they're coming to us and saying, hey, how do we be an AI forward organization? It starts with the data. Like, do you have that right now? A lot of, in our case, brands have very fragmented data all over the place, all over their channels. They're in different systems. Search over here, social over here. If you feed any one of those sets of data to AI, you're going to get a kindergartner version of AI. It needs to know what are the keywords that drove traffic, what's the social engagement, what's the review sentiment, how are they answering the survey question, what are they asking the chatbot. Mm-hmm. It needs a 360 view, but unfortunately, most of our customers have adopted this kind of fragmented point solution approach to their marketing, which means the data is fragmented. So now they have to come onto a centralized platform. That's data centralization is really, really important. And then comes all the prompting and the fun stuff of how you teach the AI to think like you and be like you.
But there's a lot of
back
back-end pipe building that you have to
There's a ton of pipe building. Then there's the ethics layer, because the AI wants to please. It really does. It wants to fix all your problems, and it'll tell you whatever you want to hear.
That's the second quote of the day. AI wants to please.
And so you've got to teach it to be more human-like, which, by the way, is the scary part, because I actually think as humans we don't have precision. Like, you go to 10 doctors, you might get 10 answers sometimes, or 10 lawyers and whatnot. And so how do you get that consistency? How do you train it to actually be consistent? Because it wants to make things up, unfortunately, like humans do often. It's like my CTO. My favorite thing about my CTO is he yells at us because we oversold something. Then I bring him to the sales meeting. Suddenly he's overselling like all these features because he wants to please. Right. It's Victor? Very human nature.
No, I just wanted to layer on that. I think it's kind of crazy that we call a neural net that gives an answer that might be wrong a hallucination, because we don't go to those doctors and say like, oh, you're hallucinating. It's like, oh no, that's just what you think. Right. It's what you think. You have a different data set, right, feeding it. And so, yeah, these are going to be thinking machines, right? They have thoughts. They could be wrong.
How many people in the audience use Salesforce as part of their workflow, or have used it previously? I mean, it generates massive data sets. And Cosmo, can you just share with us kind of how you think about taking those data sets, Salesforce, and turning them into something that's actionable in the context of AI?
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think customer data, I mean, a lot of times the first question we get is my data going to be used for improving that model for everybody? Are
you going to appropriate my data for your model?
Right. And we say, no, that's not the case. I mean, first of all, is the education also, right? And a lot of times we are all using public models. We have our own model. Salesforce does. Salesforce Research produce models. We use that as well. But we are also integrated with OpenAI and every other vendor because we're a pretty flexible platform. And what we also are negotiating with our sort of vendors a lot of times, so every vendor is zero data retention. They cannot retain, even your prompts that you put in is your data. It's intellectual property. And so they cannot retain that, that can be audited and so on. And lastly, I think they want to also use the models in a way that they can trust. There's no toxicity coming back. We've seen in very simple cases in marketing campaigns, it can go very toxic very easily.
And quickly.
Very quickly. And it's kind of surprising. It took us by surprise, saying how quickly it's become like toxic. And a lot of stereotypes that are there in the world, obviously it's learned from that. The biases, I think it was alluded to a little bit, the bias that it can have, that a particular position can only be held by, let's say, men or women or a particular race, and so on and so forth. This is all built into it. And when it generates content, it'll come back with that bias, however subtle it is, or sometimes very open, it can come back with that. And we are really building, trust is our number one quality, we've said that before, but even now I have a product leader on trust, and we spend enormous amount of energy now worrying about almost, how do I make this system trustworthy in the enterprise situation? This is not for fun you're doing, right? I mean, you did something in an evening, whatever, it got wrong, right or wrong, you have other engines to go to, maybe you'll go to Google, maybe you'll go to Bing, maybe you'll go to something else.
Garth, is that your
But that's the
experience
thing.
too? Is trust the number one thing that your customers are concerned about when they...
Yeah, I think every
Can I trust it?
Every industry is saying the same thing, especially, so we work with banking quite a bit, and they were going gung-ho in little small projects all over the place in different banks that we were working with, and all of a sudden they just stopped. And they just said, wait a second, this is going to be out of hand. So then they just kind of slowed down on that. And so trust is the key thing for all the reasons we were talking about earlier. Yeah,
Thank you.
It's a big deal.
Mickey, this is something that you've talked about earlier, and I'm just wondering if you can share with us an example of how you give peace of mind to a customer who's coming in and expresses a level of concern around the area of trust.
Yeah, I think first we kind of know how to put guardrails and objectives to what they want to optimize for. Because I think that the bigger thing is like human beings need to control where they want to go. And then the machine learning and AI will assist them where to get
So
there.
you're saying autonomy is an important element of the human-computer interaction?
Exactly. Because otherwise, if you just let the machine do that...
why the hell do you need a human in the loop at all, right?
But also what will happen is that it very quickly learned that the best thing that actually is most effective thing is emotional thing in an ad. Like there's positive stuff, like for example in one of the beverages they realized that any ad that kind of speaks about flavor and taste and things like that is driving performance. It's emotional, it activates our brain to remember it better, but guess what is the kind of more effective emotional reaction? Anger.
Anger, right.
Anger. And I think social media, you're seeing more and more anger, and it has to be distilled in. We are seeing another phenomenon, which is like the massive drop of every content every 3 seconds. So you have to distill your message very quickly, and if you blend anger with it, it's going to be very effective and very viral, and then this is why it actually leads to kind of polarism and a lot of like bad stuff. So they want to make sure that we put this control, especially if we go to the generative AI. Generative AI is supposed to build those videos we saw, which is funny and lovely, but if you unleash that and it learns automatically, it might do the opposite. Suddenly it will just tell you, hey, if you want to optimize your performance, here's what I suggest. So I think that is the fear of unleashing that.
So Jen, can you talk a little bit about negativity bias as just as a cognitive framework? I mean, why is it that negativity? Do you have a perspective on this, maybe from your lab or work that's been done at Stanford?
Well, we don't have to go that far. I mean, people do that. It's not just AI that's doing it. If you only focus on performance, doing negative things, driving fear gives the best outcome. But as human beings, we don't do that oftentimes, at least good people, because we have other things to consider. The thing is, AI with very limited things to optimize, you're asking it to do too many things. I want to ask all of you, can you think of one person who can do everything and you think it's perfect and you trust that person? Literally, there is no such scenario. Human beings, like this guy, I can trust to do this and that. because we have all these factors to consider, we exist as human beings, and those are the way we optimize how we behave. But when you're trying to make AI a machine that doesn't exist in any other form, asking for performance, and also the algorithms are very simple as it stands, I think it's important at this stage to limit it to very specific tasks. And so the way I usually utilize AI is giving very simple tasks that it should do. And for that, I think we can all imagine somebody who could water these plants very well, right? So when you want to generalize a solution, I think it's important to limit the task.
Thank you. So you've heard a lot of cautionary tales about AI from people who've developed systems. Let's turn the page and talk about some of the opportunities in front of us, the things that are going to affect humanity for the positive as a result of taking on this new technology. And who wants to take a shot at that? Victor, why don't you take a first pass at that? Just give us some of the optimistic points of view.
Yeah, I'll give you one. I'll weave it back to, the product we're launching is, I can share at a high level, we're going to bring asynchronous video into the workplace. Asynchronous video is not used ubiquitously in work. If you think who's actually sent someone an async one-way video, very few people, right? It's in person, it's synchronous video, and it's a bunch of email and text. One key reason we don't send a lot of video is people have a lot of video anxiety.
So we're talking about video email.
Yeah. Basically a video message, right? People have a really hard time with what to say. They're not comfortable. All of these things are solvable with AI, right? The solution we're building is going to basically allow you to record with no anxiety.
Or maybe an avatar. I can send you my avatar, no problem.
We won't do that because we want to send an authentic version,
okay.
not the Barbie version that we sent. But that's a great example, right? In the act of solving that problem, we're going to have people recording videos, and what's going to happen as a second order effect of that is they will become better speakers, right? So that's just a...
Garth, give us your positive take on AI, and then we're going to open the floor to questions, and I'm hopeful that there are some questions in the audience. Garth?
So I'm kind of thinking about it from a company standpoint, an organizational standpoint, what things it can do. So actually, my brother-in-law was just telling me how they're using it in their company, and they're one of the early adopters with OpenAI and their business version. And he said, we took all our knowledge management system and we dumped it in. And he said, we just started going crazy. And just all of the things we could see, deals that were successful, deals that weren't successful. Why weren't they successful? They were able to use that.
My HR questions can be answered.
Oh my gosh, it was just over there. And he was the excitement in his face, you could just see it's like, we've never been able to do this before. So I think those kinds of things are really exciting.
Thank you. Mickey?
I think that we've seen before, and I hope it's the same, when open source came up, we thought hey, it's going to actually cannibalize all the software licenses. And what happened is it allowed more solution to be out there, more companies, more jobs, just smaller companies became more powerful. And I think now it's the same. The productivity is going to be very, very high, and the barrier of entry is going to be lower all the time. So I'm hoping that it's going to actually generate more jobs. The job is going to be very different. And I think it's going to also, the previous person said, energy cost is going down and that productivity going up. I think we're going to be in a situation where abundance is available. So I think securing basic stuff for human being, like food and things like that can happen. But as human beings, we tend to also choose the bad use cases.
Questions from the audience? I mean, the negative use cases, or the bad use cases, that drives Hollywood bottom line. I mean, the Terminator is a pretty dark dystopian view of AI, and it's easy to get people emotionally engaged with that. But really, AI is a potential force for enormous good. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at University of California, Irvine, and we're looking at AI across the board, education, research. How is AI going to change the way that we design therapies and develop new drugs? There's a case where we've used AI, not we at UCI, but broadly, used AI to engineer proteins as a result of just looking at their sequence. And that was a problem that, to this date, has never been solved. And it's been solved in the last year in an incredible fashion. And now we're going to have totally new protein therapies online as a result of that. Are there questions from the audience? We can, please.
think the last comment you made about jobs, I think is really important. These transitions are going to come very, very quickly. I think everybody in this room is going to benefit. But I think there's a huge swath of society that's not going to be able to transition jobs as quickly as AI is going to take jobs away. And I think that that's a real problem with what's coming. So the long-term social benefit is clear, but I think there's going to be a huge mid-term, massive impact.
Yeah, so
I think that's a huge challenge.
the disruption as we switch from the previous paradigm or model to the new paradigm, and this has happened over and over again, right? With the change to agrarian society, the change from an agrarian society to an industry, the move to urban environments. It's a very real transition. Garth, can you just, please, Kaushal.
I'm just going to respond maybe. One thing we do ask a lot of customers, I do ask at least in meetings is, are you training, reskilling people or upskilling them with new things that they need to do? Like prompt engineering is, whether that's a new term or not, remains to be seen, but definitely how do you interact with these? There is a skill there of how you extract value from that. And some customers say, yeah, we have some people who are very interested in experimenting with it and learning new things, and we are putting them into those positions. So they're creating new positions, they're creating new things. And there's always a human in the loop, at least so far, in most of these enterprise situations at least, right? Somebody's reviewing it.
Did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I think that's still from a tech perspective, though.
Right.
Let's talk about like taxis that are using AI. It's going to
Sure.
wipe out a huge swath of jobs.
Yes.
Reskilling those individuals is a whole different challenge.
That's
for
right.
semis that are going to come and everybody's there. So I think for society, like how fast we do this. So autonomous trucks are cool, but as a society, is that a good decision right along the road or a bad?
It's a great question. Other questions? Please.
Prompted by this conversation. So, let's say you go to a website, whether it's a real or fake website, the browser tells you there is a security certificate, there is a green flag at the top that says you're in the right place. Now, in a couple of years, when I can a video telling my doctor, do I know if it's my doctor, or is that the virtual doctor talking to me while my doctor is in Hawaiian Beach?
So, great question. Mickey, how do we think about authentication in this new world order?
It's a good question. I think that we're also seeing that the technology with AI can actually break into code or the captcha, for example, like analyzing images and just typing, do you see a boat? Today it's like, yeah, it can actually figure this out very quickly. So I think there's like security concern, big time. I think, I think there's job security, like all that transition. I think hopefully we'll see more, I think, governance around this. I think on security probably is going to be companies, jobs, hopefully governments will have to step in. Otherwise we'll see like really a dangerous, risky situation.
And just a quick clarification, for now it's easy. There was a speaker before, but it clearly up and up. We know it's not me, recording it easy, but that's about the change.
Yeah, as the deep fakes get better, right, the authentication will get harder.
You can see what's going on. Like imagine deep fake in a situation of war in Europe and things like that. That can really change dramatically, and people can react as well, right? Today people are just seeing that right now. They feel it's happening right now. They will take action because they see it live. So I think it's almost like a nuclear power that I think, hopefully again, governance will step in.
Okay, we've got 5 minutes left. I'm going to ask for closing thoughts, and I'll just ask you to start, and
Sure.
including these, your closing thoughts.
Well,
we'll go
wanted
right
to
and left.
sort of just answer that. There's a possibility that you won't care, or maybe that our kids won't care. That they'd rather get that answer from the doctor sooner instead of waiting 2 months to see him than care if he's on the beach or not. Like my parents still go into the bank to see the teller, to see their money being deposited. I haven't been to a bank in a really long time. I just want to deposit it, right? So the behavior may also change, right? We will adjust as we always are. We are, frankly, as a species, one of the least efficient species. There's probably 15 other species that can get from point A to point B much faster than us. But what we know how to do is develop the bicycle or the car or the rocket, and we evolve, and GDP, every time one of these major technologies has come out, GDP has grown, new jobs have been created. Certainly people do suffer, but our behavior has also changed. So just leave some room to whether that's actually the most important question or not, and how we can actually leverage this to make our lives better, faster, in this case, treat real problems. I think those are the exciting parts.
Thank you. Victor, last words.
Yeah, no, I think anyone who's working in AI, and this was my perspective even before the AI wave, but every business leader in this room is responsible not just to generate a shareholder return, but to build a business that serves customers, that serves employees, but also has a ripple effect in the society. And I think that's even more important now with some of these technologies. So my core message is absolutely, think about the first order and the downstream impacts of all the stuff you guys are building, and have you actually thought through what is the ramification of putting this out in the world? And do you want to deal with those ramifications? Because you should be responsible for it.
Thank you. Colin, last parting thoughts.
I think that with every technology there is good and bad, right? And I think I'm in the camp of the net good that will come out of this, and the creativity and the opportunity that comes out of this is going to be transformational. Yes, there will be bad stuff that will happen, like in some case bad medical advice might be dished out by some place. But also think about the other case where somebody did not have an access to a doctor at all somewhere in a remote place, wherever, and a world-class advice can be at their fingertips because of this kind of a technology, right? And that's going to be transformative. Or in education, or in any other ways, the best teacher can be available for a student does not have access to that. So it can be a great leveler, and the opportunity, I think, trumps the risks. We need to manage the risks and the governance, and everything that needs to be there. Disinformation and all of that is a real threat. There's tremendous amount of risk there, but that I think governments will step in, and I think there will be governing bodies hopefully will manage that.
Thank you. Jen, parting thoughts.
Well, I work on curing brain disorders, so by having access to these large data interpreting AI, it really helps us really improve lives directly by curing disorders, etc. And so I don't think AI only has negative impacts. It's definitely going to do a lot of really good things, but we need to make sure it does good things. And I think one way that's really important is for us to make AI be humanity-centric. I don't think it's going to be achieved by just governance. It's deferring our responsibility to someone else. We don't want to be governed to do the right thing. I think we all have to really take the stance of we need to design these technologies to do things for us. And one of the reasons why I cautioned against using generative AI in certain ways is there is human tendency. We're a little lazy. We want it to do all the stuff for us. And as soon as you kind of cross a certain line, forgetting the fact that AI is to serve us, not like we rely on them for all our decisions, then things starts to go bad. And so I think the best thing we can all do is all realize that we are the owners of AI technology, not the other way around.
Thank you. Garth, parting words.
Again, from an organizational standpoint, I think something we've learned from digital transformation over the last 10 or 12 years is that a lot of companies just waited and didn't prepare people and didn't develop skills and just kind of wait until things happened. It's a big difference between those companies and the companies that were more proactive, who look at this and say, here's what we need to do to prepare the organization for these changes. And I think that's something that I think some of the biggest winners out of AI, and especially generative AI right now, is going to be companies that are really thinking about how is this going to impact our talent? How does this impact it's going to change everything in the organization. Organizations are going to look very different 5 years from now, 10 years from now. And if we can be a little proactive on that and start looking at the technology and what it's doing and how we can adapt to the organization to make that work.
Thank you. Last words.
I would say companies need to embrace the change. It took me a while to really convince the engineering to continuously use those Copilot and generative AI. it's a mind shift, and like we paid for it, they still didn't use it, we enforced them to use it, and I think it's really important to do that. It's like otherwise they're just very inefficient versus other companies. At the same time, kind of building social responsibility, I think it's going to be really important because it's a very powerful technology.
Thank you. Sanam, thank you for the invitation to be here. Thank you for your attention, and please join me in thanking the panel for their participation.